Hi teachers, my name is Ping Ha and I'm a high school science and math teacher in East Los Angeles. Today's video is on mastery grading. My intention is not to give you a step-by-step guide on how to implement it. Instead, my intention is to give you a rationale behind why I choose to use it and to give you a quick glimpse of what it might look like in the classroom. In April this year, I shared the same presentation with UCLA TEP teachers. And I will be referring to some of the questions and responses that were shared during that presentation. First, to start off, let's take a moment at home to reflect on this question. What feelings or emotions surface when it comes to talking about grades? I asked that same question to the group of UCLA TEP teachers, and these were some of the responses that they shared with me. Words such as anxiety, stressful, and trauma emerged. Someone said, I feel like grades don't always tell you everything about the student's performance or skills. These sentiments also resonate with me and are some of the reasons why I choose to use mastery grading. Before jumping into mastery grading, let's take a moment to look at traditional grading practices. In this activity, I'm going to have you look at the student's grade printout and determine a grade for the student. So, what grade did you come up with? I did the same activity with other teachers, and these are some of the responses that they shared. As you can see, there's a lot of variety here. I do this activity to show just how subjective traditional grading practices can be. So, how is mastery grading different? Well, embedded in mastery grading is this essential question. What does the student know? Now, let's take a moment to look at the same grade printout and try to answer that question. Okay, now here are some responses shared by other teachers. Where did your response overlap? Now you can see how we're all on the same page regarding what the student knows. But most importantly, we can identify what the student needs support in and what they've already mastered. So, what exactly is mastery grading? It's curriculum, instruction, and assessment that's designed around learning targets. I want you to focus in on the words curriculum and instruction. Everything you do in your classroom becomes more intentional as you try to support your students in mastering the learning targets. So mastery grading isn't just changing your grading practices, but also the way you teach. Many times you'll hear mastery grading referred to as mastery learning and grading. Okay, the next big question. How do we implement mastery grading? That's a really big question, and I'm going to be fully transparent with you. I can't answer that question alone. In fact, I'm going to be referring to my school's grading guidelines. These guidelines were developed by our entire teaching staff after we pulled our collective knowledge and experiences together. I'm sharing this with you because I want you to understand that mastery grading is not something that can be done overnight. It takes time and it takes a lot of reflection. But is it impossible? No. And in my honest opinion, it is well worth the time and effort that we put into it. All right, let's get to the guidelines. First, you'll want to identify about 5 to 10 learning targets. Learning targets are based on your curriculum and your content standards. These are the essential skills and knowledge that your students will develop as a result of engaging in your course. Next, academic grades are separate from work habits and behavior. This means that attendance, homework, notes, and classwork are separate from the academic grade. Yikes. I know. This was a really difficult concept for me to wrap my head around, but the rationale makes sense. Let's look at this example. If a student is copying notes from a Bill Nye video, it doesn't mean that they learned anything. It just means that they can copy notes. If I wanted to see if they learned something, I could give them a quiz on it. And that's what I would use as an assessment for their academic grade. All right, for the third guideline, students reflect and have multiple opportunities to practice and demonstrate mastery. And finally, grades are based on a body of evidence. In the next part of the video, I will show you some examples of the last two guidelines in practice. One of the key pieces of mastery grading is allowing students to have multiple opportunities to practice and demonstrate mastery. Let's take a moment to reflect on that. What could that look like in a classroom? This is what other teachers shared in response to that question. Do you see any overlap between these responses and your response? Here is just one example of how I allow students to have multiple opportunities to demonstrate mastery. The learning target here is, I can model using mathematics. My students know that modeling with mathematics means to create equations to represent real-world situations. These two questions are questions found on different assessments within the same unit. So my students are assessed multiple times throughout the unit on the same skill. The rest of these questions are assessing the same learning target, but they were found on different assessments across different units. My students have the entire semester to practice and improve on this one learning target. Another key component of mastery grading is that students have ownership of their learning. So let's take a moment to reflect on that. What can student ownership look like? Here are some responses from other teachers. Do you find any overlap with your response here? Here are some examples of how students in my classroom have ownership of their learning. You can see that my students reflect quite a bit on how they're doing. They also set goals in relation to their current progress. And notice the growth mindset language that these students are using. Here is a graphic organizer that my students use to track their progress in mastering different learning targets. Here, you can see that they're even asked to determine their current mastery level. Notice that they don't average their scores. In fact, what they're looking for are patterns of improvement or patterns of mode, which indicate their current mastery level. In addition to this video, I've attached articles and documents to support you in your professional development. I want to thank you for watching this video and happy teachings.